Welcome to the Weekly Juice Podcast, where we discuss all things real estate, personal finance, investing, entrepreneurship, and the many ways to achieve financial independence. We interview accomplished investors and entrepreneurs with the goal that their stories inspire you to take control of your financial future. Here to get your creative juices flowing while also documenting their own personal investing journeys are your hosts, Corey Jacobson and Ryan Bevilacqua.
Welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys Ryan and Corey here with another episode. Today we had a heavy hitter on the podcast. For those of you on social media, you probably know this gentleman. We had the pleasure of interviewing Austin Rutherford. He is a real estate investor currently living in Florida, but he's from Columbus, Ohio. He has a massive portfolio of 100 units that he owns entirely himself. He also is doing a couple different warehouses in the commercial space, but he's a wholesaler, flipper, real estate investor, just a man of many hats, but absolutely killing it. And he was just the nicest guy ever.
So nice. And you guys won't be able to hear this, but he spent 15 minutes after the episode was done just asking us how he could help us. And he actually did provide a lot of value just by staying on for 15 minutes with us. So that just kind of shows you the type of guy he is. But a lot of people say they have a $20 million real estate portfolio and don't actually have that to show for. This dude is the real deal. He has programs, courses, the entire funnel for people to get in and learn from him directly. He has a coaching program where you get access to him. But you'll notice how succinctly and clearly he articulates what he did. I think this episode is actually pen and paper, what to do as well, not just mindset, how'd I get there. He said, if I lost everything, what exactly I would do today. And this dude's a hustler. I mean, he's really a workhorse. And like I said, he could not have been nicer.
No, he couldn't have been nicer. And I think the thing you're going to get wrapped up in the entire episode, but I think you're going to be wanting to stay when you hear that his first deal, he made $107,000. His first flip, he didn't spend $1 on himself. He reinvested it all back into the business and was able to, way more than 10x everything today. So just a cool little nugget there. This episode, I can say, bookended from beginning to end, is well worth the listen. You'll pick up something along the way, every step of the way. So I think without further ado, we bring in Austin.
Let's do it, man.
When you have investment properties and tenants, you need a good system in place for collecting rent to make it easy as possible. And RentRedi can help you with everything. When you sign up for RentRedi, you can start adding your properties, inviting tenants, and creating charges. You can even set up automatic rent reminders and create auto late fees as well. For tenants, they can pay via ACH, card, or even cash using RentRedi's web and mobile apps. They can also use an automatic payment setup and sign up for rent reporting so they get rewarded for paying rent on time. RentRedi saves you time and hassle by automating rent collection, and you can manage everything from one dashboard. For our Weekly Juice listeners, RentRedi's given us a special 50% off for any RentRedi plan using our code WeeklyJuice at rentredi.com. That's RentRedi.com using the code WeeklyJuice. That's WeeklyJuice to save 50% off any RentRedi plan. Austin, officially welcome to the Weekly Juice podcast. Corey and I are so excited to have you on the show, man. It's been a long time coming, and we've looked up to you for a while, so this is going to be a fun one for us.
I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So if you could take us back to, I'd like to go maybe pre-real estate. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you came from, and then why the hell you got into real estate investing and have become, quite the entrepreneur that you are.
Yeah, so born and raised Columbus, Ohio. My original dream was to go to the NBA. So I was a baller back in the day. And, unfortunately, things didn't work out. Fell out of love with the game of the game of basketball, and then fell in love with the game of real estate. So really what put me on was a book called Think and Grow Rich. That opened up my mind to the possibilities. And then for whatever reason, I was sitting on a rooftop looking at an 8-unit apartment building. And I was like, somebody's got to be making money on that thing. And that led me to passive residual income, which then led me to real estate. And I've been doing it for the last 8 or 9 years now.
Oh, so it's funny that you say that. It sparked something for me. When I was in college, I was thinking about that too. And I didn't get into real estate investing when I was in college. We did it 4 years later when I was 26, I think where I was 27. But I remember being in this house, 10 units or 10 bedrooms. So it was 5 up, 5 down, and everyone was paying $750, and I was like, this house is probably worth $250,000, $300,000. This dude's probably murdering. And meanwhile, like there's holes in the walls everywhere. He's got to do some maintenance, but that had a similar thought to you. So it's funny that you say that. I'm curious about like what made you take the plunge then? Like, watching is one thing, but like diving all in and doing what you did to build this portfolio and wholesaling and flipping, it's quite the venture. So what made you take the plunge?
Yeah, I mean, I've always, been a hustler and liked money since I was a kid. So I would cut grass, shovel driveways, flip candy, make Buckeye necklaces. So I was always making money. And, the basketball was my love. That fell out. So there was like an empty part, in my heart, right? And I was like, what do I do? And then I was like, cool, like real estate, what did it is passive residual income. So passive is money that you make without working. Residually is money that you make continuously. I was like, well, if I can make money without working continuously, it sounds pretty good to me. And, alternatively, I was like, well, cool. The NBA is not going to make me millions. Real estate is going to make me millions, right? There's 90% of all people who file a tax return with $1 million or more on it had real estate in their portfolio. So it just all kind of aligned. It was like, real estate it is. So I just started buying, those little like books. Back in the day, they would like mail you like binders of papers. That's when I got into the game. So that, just every like couple $100 here, couple $100 there, just learning as much as I could. And then I actually went to Phoenix, Arizona to play basketball for a year out of high school. And that's when I started learning all this, and then decided to move back to Columbus, Ohio, because it's what I knew. Got a valet job, and then ended up buying my first duplex rental property in December of 2013 was that first rental property.
Wow. Love it. That's awesome. So I want to talk about the first rental. Actually, maybe it's your first flip, because I know one of them it really helped you kind of start. It was a big hit to help you kind of snowball up to the next deal. So let's talk about that. Was that the first rental, or was that the first flip where and I won't tell how much you made, you could tell us.
Yeah, so that was the first flip. So I bought that rental when I was 20, and then I was broke because I had 35 grand saved, put as a down payment. I was like, well, it took me 20 years to buy one. I got to make money faster to buy more. So then that's what put me into flipping houses. And then I ended up, I got taught to raise money, other people's money, to flip houses. I didn't know what wholesale was. I didn't know what any of that was. So I was like, cool, I'm going to go flip a house with other people's money. So started doing marketing, and then found that opportunity. But the thing is like, so I joined the coaching program, $25,000, maxed out my credit cards. I thought I was going to get rich overnight. From that day to the day I made money was a 16-month journey. So it definitely did not happen overnight. I was valeting cars 50 to 60 hours a week. I was going to college, taking 15 credit hours, and I was trying to start my real estate business on the side for 16 months straight. And 10 months into that journey, I ended up getting a call from somebody that wanted to sell their property. It was through a probate list. So put it under contract for $74,000, needed 170 grand in construction. So 600 square foot addition, $25,000 in the foundation, framing, roof, gutters, electric, plumbing, anything you can imagine. So raised $250,000 to fund that deal. And then it was 10 months to buy it, and then another 6 months to buy, renovate, and sell it. So that's that 16-month timeline. And then sold it and pocketed $107,000 net profit 4 days after my 22nd birthday. And then that, I literally reinvested every single penny. And then that's really what blew things up for me.
Okay. So most people's first flips don't go that way. So like almost everyone says, well, we made like 5-10 grand, which we've done one like by ourselves. We've done a number of other projects, but we've done one like flip burr kind of thing by ourselves. And I was like, holy shit. I don't know, like, I don't want to do that again, right? It's a lot of work. I'm curious what gave you the confidence, but also the confidence to raise $250,000 when you've never done something before. Like, who bought into you, and how did you get them to buy it?
Yeah, so, I was 21 years old when I put the property under contract, and I had the duplex from a year-ish prior to that. So I guess arguably I had some real estate experience, but it's very minimal real estate experience, no business experience. I'm 21 years old. So kind of what gave me some of the confidence along the way, when I put it under contract, I was going to a lot of networking events leading up to that. And I met a guy in the Columbus market that was in the game for probably 2 or 3 years before I was, so successfully doing it. So I ended up calling him when I got it under contract, because I was like, I don't know how to raise this money. And I didn't know it was wholesaling at the time, but I asked him, I was like, hey, can you come look at it and let me know if I'm crazy? And then if I can't do it, like, do you want to pay me 5 or 10 grand for the deal? And he came out, luckily, he walked it. He's like, yo, this is a great deal. If you can't get it funded, let me know. I would love to buy it, but, try and get it funded and do the deal yourself. So that's one thing. The second thing, again, I had a mentor early on. So going through, I actually remember getting on a phone call with them, and because I got a $28,000 price reduction. I had it in contract for 102 and got it negotiated down to 74. So them walking me through that process of getting it inspected, bringing out a structural engineer to get that price reduction. And then, him just kind of talking me through the rehab, gave me a little bit more confidence. And then I had at least 5 different general contractors through the property to quote it before I bought it. So I got the estimates of the rehab before purchasing it. So luckily found a decent one, that completed 98% of the job. And all those things, kind of gave me the confidence, like, okay, hey, this is a, good deal. I'm going to give it a whirl. And, that's kind of how we ended up taking it down.
Wow. I want to talk over, I think we breezed through it too, but you also mentioned at some point spending 25 grand, right, on this mentorship. Was this for the program, or was this to gain that mentor to teach you the ropes?
Yeah, so mentorship coaching, like, it's always like this misconstrued thing. So it was a program with access to coaching calls. So it was a mentor program type of thing. And yeah, I mean, that's what I did early on. 25,000, maxed out my credit cards.
That's a bet on yourself, man.
That's what I'm saying. You're valeting cars, you're taking class, and I mean, you had the one rental, right? But that's insane to drop 25K. We're hesitant at this point. We're in a different spot than that, right? We're 10 years into our job. So I think it's insane to bet on yourself. You knew what you wanted, you went after it, and clearly it's paid off for you. So I think that's amazing, man.
So I think the story going back on it is an eye opener. I spend probably $50,000 to $100,000 a year today, continuously every year since, on mentors and coaches. But going back to that first, I've never did it up until that first time. And it was like this 3-day thing. The day 2, they pitched you. Day 3, you had to have the money, $25,000. And this is like a couple months after I just bought that house. So I had maybe $1,000 to my name. But I was sitting in the seat, right? And I feel like there's opportunities that pass people by a few times in their life that people have to take advantage of. And to me, I was sitting there, I was like, this is it. Like, this is the opportunity, right? And I don't know what made me feel like that. I just felt it in my heart. So I went home that night and I went to AmericanExpress.com and told them I made $100,000 a year. I was 20, I think I was still 20 at the time. I'm not going to say I lied. I maybe fibbed a little bit.
Stretched the truth. Yeah.
yeah. We'll go with that.
Stretched it, dude. Yeah.
And they gave me a $15,000 credit card on it, and so I was still $10,000 short. And so I called everybody I knew. I was like, hey, can I get this? Can you lend it to me? Can I borrow it? And everyone's like, hey, if it sounds too good to be true, it typically is. You can't just like get rich overnight. How do you know this real estate thing's going to work? And I was like defeated, right? And at the time I was still living with my parents, and it was 2 a.m. And I literally crawled under my parents' dining room table because I was genuinely feeling like I was missing out on an opportunity of a lifetime, and started crying. And it was, I guess, a little bit more than crying. My parents heard me upstairs, 2 a.m. And, thank God they came down, heard it, and they've seen what I've been able to do. I hustled when I was young. I played basketball. I saved 30 grand by the age of 20. I bought a house, and they believed in me, obviously. So they were luckily enough for me, they were able to front the other $10,000 for me. And that's how the 25,000 came together. But the reason I tell that story is I see too many people see that opportunity and not go get it. They're like, oh, I can't do it, daggone it. But like, that's why people miss out on those opportunities in their life.
Yeah, 100%. And a pro tip for people out, maybe not a pro tip, but a tip that I just learned for people out there, I have a Chase Sapphire preferred card. All you have to do is call them and ask them for more money, by the way, or even do it online. Like, I had a $25,000 line and now it's 40, but just because I asked. So people gotta just ask, and because the banks want to lend you money. Now, if you're smart, you pay it off at the end of every month, which is what I try to do. But you have access to the bank's money, use it. So very, very cool. And my father lent me about that same $10,000 for my first property too, and I paid him back within a year. So it's cool that you had that resource, and they believed in you as well. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing it too, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that might skip over that fact, and I can appreciate you sitting under the table crying, dude, because you seriously, you believed in it so hard that you're like, how could you not ride out for your son? I mean, I don't know. I love it, man. So,
I guess talk about the building of his portfolio. Did you have something specific?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. First rental, first flip, you crush the first flip. 100 grand to reinvest is awesome. You're on your way. Can you maybe give us a snapshot of now? What's your portfolio look like? And we could talk backwards on how you got there. But for everyone that a lot of people probably know you, but maybe they're not intimate. They don't have the intimate details of your portfolio.
Yeah. And one thing to go back on it, the $107,000 net in my pocket 24 days after my 22nd birthday, I didn't spend a single penny of it. I didn't go on vacation. I didn't go to dinner. I didn't buy sneakers. I didn't buy cars. Literally didn't spend a penny. I put it all back into the business. I went back to valeting cars. I went back to college. And then 90 days later, I flipped my next house, made another 50,000. And then I quit everything and went all in on real estate. So people get that check and they just, go blow it. And that's the problem with people. So
I probably would have taken a couple grand and done something, but that's just me.
I think it's great, man. You didn't tease yourself, right? There's so many things you can do. And to be honest, you're seeing all these cars you're valeting too. And you're like, bro, you could have semi dream car with that. I mean, pretty much dream car just with that one check. So kudos to you for not doing that and way more excellent than that. We'll talk about that. We'll let you catch us up on where you're at now, but that's awesome.
Yeah. So I did 0 in my first year, like 1 and then 7 and then 20. And then our biggest year, I think we did about 100 deals. And that's between like wholesale and flipping, new construction, rental property. So that's all combined. And what the portfolio looks like now, we're just over 100 residential doors. And then we have a 16,000 square foot warehouse as well. So the portfolio is about $20 million that I currently own today. No syndication model, no partners on like syndication type style. And then, outside of that, I've flipped wholesale or new construction, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other properties as well.
So your portfolio is, you've raised money, like a private money, you've paid them a percentage and then bought them out of the deal. So everything is owned by you and your team, I assume, or is it just you?
So it's just me. So there's the warehouse. I have a small equity partner in it, and then one small portfolio of properties. I have an equity partner in it, but those people brought the deals to the table. So it wasn't a funding thing. It was just an opportunity thing. But basically, outside of that, I own 100% myself. But you're correct. I raised private money to fund the purchase center. It's the Burr method. I raised private money to buy and rehab it, rent it out, and then refinance, pay everybody off, and then I keep the ownership of the deal.
What's difficult to decipher now when you go on social media is that somebody will put that on there, like $20 million worth of real estate, and like they own 6% of it. And you're like, but you don't know that, and it's like you own 100% of this. Like that's going to be legacy money for your family. And even if it isn't at this exact time, fast forward 10 years, it already is. But my point is that people will say 1,500 units. I got all this, and I find it like, a little bit it's just off-putting because people buy into courses and buy into models and follow people that maybe have had success by having dollars, but actually having the knowledge and the wherewithal and going all in. And I'm not advocating against partners. We have partners. Like I love having a 5% ownership in a deal, but I just don't advertise that I have 100 units. It's not the way to do it in my opinion.
I'm with you 100%. Like I own a small equity piece, single digit percent equity and 108 units, and I don't even count it as anything. So it's like, that's why I said like I own it. You know what I mean? It's very different. And the problem with social media is like, you don't know how to decipher that, unfortunately. But no, I agree with you for sure. So
that's your quote behind you. Wealth is your ownership, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
So this is a cool story that kind of led me to the portfolio that I had. And that's why I believe in that so much. So when I got into the game, remember initially I wanted passive residual income, right? And then I started flipping houses. But the problem is I got caught chasing money for 5 years, meaning flipping wholesaling houses, trying to run it up for 5 years straight. You make 20K a month, 50K a month, 100K a month, 200K a month, 300K a month. That number will go literally forever. And the problem is you see it on social media, so you try to compare yourself to it and do the same thing. That's what I did for 5 years. And I woke up 5 years, I had, I don't know, maybe 15 rental properties through that. And I'm talking hundreds of deals during that 5 years. And I woke up one day and I got a call from one of my buddies and we started real estate at the same time. I was 90% flips, 10% rentals. He was 90% rentals, 10% flips. So early on in our career, I had way more money than he did because I was cashing checks, right? I was chasing money today, wholesaling and flipping. He was building wealth through real estate, right? So 5 years into it, I got on a call with him. He's like, yo, I just refinanced my part of my portfolio, 30 houses of his 150 houses that he currently owned. And I was like, well, tell me about it. What's it look like? He was like, well, I took the 30 and I paid off 10 of them completely. So 10 paid off houses. That's $1 million plus right there. I re-leveraged the other 20, 75%. So he's cash flowing at least $10,000 a month net just off of that portfolio. And I pulled out $1 million tax free. I was like, run it back? What'd you just say? And he explained it again. And I was like, I've been on a hamster wheel for the last 5 years. And I went into my office the next day and literally inverted my business. I went from 90% flips and wholesales and 10% rentals to 90% rentals and 10% flips and wholesales. And that was probably maybe 3.5 years ago. And like I said, we went from that 15-ish portfolio to now 100 plus doors and a $20 million plus portfolio.
Every flipper I talk to, and I have a really good friend who does flips in Florida. He's about our age. He's awesome. He crushes it. He probably has 15 rentals, but he does way more flips. And he says to me, he's like, dude, if I would have kept one out of every 3 flips, like I would be on an island for good right now. And I'm like, I know, that's what everyone says. Like, you got to hold on to them. And we didn't get into flipping model. We actually have been more of like the buying and then partnering with other people that are actually better than us at operating them and getting GP ownership and LP ownership and those stuff too. But that's because we feel like we can't do it better. Like, there's people like you out there. I'm competing with I'm competing with you. So it's like, how can I win? There's people like you in my market. I'm just not as good. I could potentially get that good, but why not join them, right? That's the whole thing. But anyway, let's talk about how you got to that stage. Maybe when you flipped the switch, like, what was your strategy from the change of the flip to going into rentals, and how did you like implement that strategy after you decided you were going to go that route?
Yeah, and this is probably one of the biggest questions I get, because I'm like, yo, you gotta own real estate. But they're like, I need money to operate my business. I was like, I agree. So how you can actually implement that today is if you want to make that change. Again, the problem is you chase literally an endless number that'll never stop. So what I did is I figured out what my monthly overhead was, including paying myself a salary that I can comfortably live on. That's the big piece a lot of people miss. Their overhead might be 20, but then they need 8,000 a month to, live and travel and like comfortable. I'm not saying ball out, but just comfortable, right? So they base it on 20 instead of the 28, which is your payroll. So you got to include your payroll. So let's say your total monthly expense is $30,000 a month. Add $10,000 or $20,000 to that so you can profit at the end of the year. So let's add 20 to that. So $50,000 a month is your overhead plus 20, but plus $250,000 a year in net profit, right? So figure out what that number is, the 50,000, and flip and wholesale until you hit the 50,000. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 deals, right? So if you're doing 10 deals a month, instead of making 100 or 200,000 in a month, make your 50,000 and then keep the other 5 deals as rental properties. So that's what I did. I figured out what my monthly overhead was, and I hit that number, which to me, I was flipping mostly. So it only took a deal or two. And then I kept rentals, everything past that. So that's how you can actually literally implement it today. But the problem is you have to give up that $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 a month number and be comfortable, with significantly less profit today, but building massive, massive wealth for the future. I told you my portfolio is $20 million today. In 25 years on a 3% appreciation, it'll be worth over $50 million, paid off, free and clear, making multi-six figures net. So it's like, you gotta give up today. The definition of what's the word? The definition of I forget, but it's giving up a present value for a greater future value.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah, the delay. Yeah.
Yes, that.
Yeah, nice. I got it. That's great. Dude, I love it. I think it's a complete way to flip your mind, and you turned your business on a head. But look at you, like, seriously, just painting the picture like that, you're going to be making out way better in the long run. I think there's a lot of people listening that are just hearing us throw out these numbers like 100 units. Oh, no problem. Just flip 10 a year, you'll be fine. And they're like, dude, I can't even get like one. I'm just learning the ropes here. So my question for you is, there's 2 questions I have here. One is like, if you're starting fresh, let's say everything was stripped, you lost everything today. How would you start at 0 and build back up to where you are?
Yeah, so if I got stripped of everything, the easiest way for me would be to go door knock or drive for dollars. That's kind of early on how I, kind of cut my teeth and got a lot of deals. So that's basically walking neighborhoods or driving neighborhoods, looking for dilapidated properties, going up and knocking on the door or skip tracing the address, the owner, and then calling them and trying to get the deal. I just did this for a 60,000 square foot warehouse yesterday. So I still do it today. And it's still a great way. It's very niche and very targeted. So you can't do 100 deals a year like that because there's just not enough opportunity. But that's how I would start out. And I would either wholesale it, but my goal would be to raise private money, right? I think that the separator between people that make some money in this business and just wholesale is them being able to raise private money and actually own the deals, whether that's flipping them or burning them out or keeping them as rental properties. Raising private money will 100% change the game for you. It did for me. So I would do that to find deals and wholesale it, or try to build relationships with private money lenders to fund those deals.
So this is an interesting one for you too. We hear, and there's a lot of ways you can go with private lending, right? Or private money and all this aspects, raising capital. There's SEC regulations for certain types of properties, or not certain types, but like the amount of investors that come into a deal, the certain price, right? Different asset classes. For you, did you differentiate essentially like bringing in people for, the question I'm trying to get to is like, how did you structure your partnerships? I know a lot of it's like cash in, right? Then you cash them out once the deal's done as a flip. But like, did you ever have like 1, 2, 3, 4 guys that just went in and tackled the property and you guys kept it forever? Because some people, when they start raising money, they're like, well, do I have to file through the SEC? Can I just do a little small deal myself? Like, how do you run the ship there?
Yeah, no, great question. So we've never had like a secured fund with the SEC, because when you do that, you got to go big dollar amount and you got to commingle funds. That's the big differentiator, is when you commingle the funds. So every deal that I've ever done, they've been independent of one another. So they've never been commingled. But that doesn't mean there's not multiple people on a deal. So for an example, we'll buy a house for $100,000, put 50 into it. We're raising $150,000 to fund that deal. Ideally, one person funds the 150. But if I call one of my lenders and they're like, hey, I only have $100,000, then I'll put them in what's called first position. And then I'll call my next lender and say, hey, I got a $50,000 opportunity available. And then I'll put them in a second position to fund the full 150. But again, completely separate mortgages, completely separate promissory notes. They're completely independent of one another. And I'm fully transparent on what a first position means and what a second position means. All right, you don't want to brush that under the rug. You need people to know that. So that's how I've been able to fund all my deals. Is just putting them as either first lien positions or second lien positions, and then burring out of it and then paying them off. I think I have one deal where I bought a subject to and I raised private money for the gap, and they're on an interest only for 5 years. So I think that's the only long-term one that I have. But again, they're only on interest. They don't have any equity in the deal. Everything else, we cash out refi in 3, 6, 9, 12 months.
Got it. So basically commingling funds is essentially like crowdfunding, right? Where we like 5 people come in and you all bring in your separate funds to take down one big thing, versus one person going all in and use it, essentially they're on the first or second lien of the property.
That's my understanding. If they're all on one note and, you pool their money together, that's where you can run into some troubles.
Yep. Cool.
And or if you go out and you market with the sign that says, hey, I'm raising money, I'm paying 10% interest. You can't do that either.
Right. Yeah.
Relationships that you have to build yourself organically.
Perfect. So let's talk about raising private capital, right? I think it's fun. We talk about this all the time because there's a lot of guys in the syndication field. Some are flipping, right? There's wholesaling, a ton of different things. But for me, I'm wondering, you obviously are a big presence on social media. Does that impact you directly to raise funds? Or I guess along the way, how did you have people to know, like, and trust you to realize like, hey, I see what Austin's doing. I think he can make a return on my money. I trust him to work with me. Like, where are you going to find these people to jump in the deals with you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll tell you like my first like 3 or 4 lenders, but today, absolutely having a personal brand, I can raise I sent out an email and I raised $1.5 million to fund like 7 deals. So when you have a personal brand, it gives you crazy credibility to go out and raise money. But again, I didn't just say like, hey, I'm paying 10%, right? There's a certain way to flow that conversation to do it the right way. So that's how I do it now. But early on, I'll go through my first few lenders. My first lender for that deal, I met her a year prior at a local real estate networking event. And I was like, hey, we're literally just talking and networking. She was like, hey, I just retired. I got this IRA that I'm rolling to a self-directed IRA, and I'm going to use that money to go out and invest into my own deals. I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm 20. I'm trying to get into real estate, trying to learn the game as well, exchange numbers. Life went on. A year later, I got that first opportunity. So I called her. I was like, hey, how's real estate? She was like, well, it's not really working. I'm still trying to find my first deal. I was like, beautiful. And she asked me, she's like, how is the real estate for you? I said, actually, I got my first opportunity. Are you interested in it? And that's how that first lender, she still lends me money today. So that's kind of how that first opportunity came through. My second lender, which is probably one of the bigger lenders that really, catapulted my business. We were in another local real estate meetup. I met a lot of money from local real estate meetups, but we were sitting there and it was back in like, 2017 maybe, where the TRID came out, where they changed all the underwriting guidelines for lenders. And this gentleman stood up and he raised his hand. He was like, hey, if I'm making loans, but they're business to business, not to individuals, do I fall under this TRID guideline? And the guy was like, no, there's only personal loans. And I was sitting there on the other corner of the room, and I was like, this guy's a private money lender. Like, there's no other reason he lends to business owners. So as soon as the meeting broke, I literally ran to him. I was the first one to introduce myself, first and only one to introduce myself, and ask him if he was a private money lender. He was lending money, took him to walk one of my houses at the time. He lent me millions and millions and millions of dollars. He actually is the first one to lend me money on my new construction where I bought a bunch of lots, first one to do it in the city, start build them. He funded all those at the beginning. I made many, many millions just on that play alone. And it's hard to get funds for a deal for an unproven concept, which was new construction in that neighborhood. But because I had that relationship, he was willing to fund it for me. And then third one is my buddy's uncle. I met him at a networking event type of thing. Not a networking event, a family reunion. And for 2 years, I just kept, putting it in his head. I'm like, hey, if you want to lend, let me know. 2 years later, he lent me money, and he's lent me millions and millions and millions of dollars. So it's just going out and talking to people. Like, the more people you talk to, the more sellers you talk to, the more deals you buy. The more people you talk to, the more money you raise.
The only way you get better at it is if you keep doing it over and over and over again. And that's the thing. Like, you didn't exactly know what you were doing when you went up to this person, right? You had a couple deals, but you said you were the first and only. Like, they have a need, and you have a need, and it worked. So I think that's awesome. One of the questions I have for you is, I know you started you started your portfolio, I believe, in Columbus, Ohio, where you live. I know you live in Florida now. What is your take on, not the market in general? I don't like that because the United States is broken up, but like, where do you like to buy deals now? And what are you seeing with shifting of, I know that people are moving to Florida, people are moving to Texas. You're one of them who moved to Florida. Are you buying deals down there? What's your strategy, I guess is what I'm saying?
Yeah, so moving down here, I was looking at deals. The market's crazy. You're literally buying for negative cash flow. Like, deals don't make sense down here in Florida, in my opinion, right? Unless you just got crazy money that you're just looking to place, which I'm still working on that. So all of my deals are still in Ohio. So everything I own is in central Ohio, Columbus and surrounding suburbs. And that's where we're still buying deals today. So, I mean, we're buying a deal or two a week right now. And it's, like I said, the mass majority of them are rental properties. So we're just trying to continuously build the rental portfolio.
Love it. It's a kind of that advocating for, you might have started in your backyard because that's what you knew, but you do not have to. Once you built that team there, you can be anywhere. You could be in, Europe if you wanted to. I'm sure you've spent time elsewhere, right? But like, being at a distance and knowing that your team is on the ground there, I'm curious how that works. Is it all managed by a property manager? Is that like, someone that you really trust? I know you built it there. Is that your play?
Yeah, so for anybody listening to this call, very early on, I always thought that I had to be the one to go and meet with contractors, to go and meet with the sellers, to ink the deals on paper personally myself. And I thought that for many, many years. And my mentor always told me, he's like, no, you don't, no, you don't, no, you don't. I was like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And finally, even when I was living in Columbus, I finally had that mental barrier shift where I didn't have to be in person all the time. So even when I was in the last couple of years of being in Columbus, I never went to the houses because we ended up doing a virtual model, even when we were local. So I think for anybody listening, you 100% can do this business remotely and virtually. It always helps to be in person at times to help build that rapport, but it's definitely not needed. So I wanted to get that off. But what my team looks like now, we have a contracting team, general contractors. We use one for the most part. We have access to a couple others when we need them. And then I have property management companies. So basically, I buy them, I raise the money, my team transaction coordinates them to closing. We have a budget in place. Our contractor quotes it. We negotiate or cut or add to the scope till we get to a number that makes sense. They run the entire project. They handle materials, labor, like everything top to bottom. They clean it. It's turnkey. Property management company walks it, takes pictures of it, and then leases it out. So that's kind of what the team looks like now.
Well, let me ask you this. You mentioned a lot of different heads there, and it's interesting when you start scaling your portfolio, you realize you can't do it all yourself, or you can, it's just going to take way longer, right? You need to start outsourcing and delegating. Can you talk to us about some of your first hires and how you structured your business, right? You don't have to give us everyone's specific role, but I think for us, we're coming to a point we got to hire people, right? And we're scaling, and there's people listening here like, all right, I'm ready. Like, someone teach me how to put this thing in place, right? So maybe take us through the mindset of realizing you had to hire someone, and then how you actually went and implemented it.
No, great question. This was one of my biggest barriers, and arguably might be still one of the biggest ones. But very early on, again, mentors like, yo, you got to hire an assistant. You got to hire an assistant. You got to hire an assistant. And I was like, I can't afford $35,000 a year. Like, that's crazy. And many years into it, finally hired an assistant, because what somebody told me is I'm not paying them. It's not for simple math, it's not a $36,000 investment. It's a $3,000 investment, because after the first 30 days, you'll know if they're going to work or not. So if they work, that means they're making you more money and you're good to go. If they don't work, you're only out $3,000, not $36,000. So that was a great mindset shift that I had to actually be willing to hire people and take that risk, quote unquote. So that was great. And so early on for my business, I was heavy flipping houses. So I had heavy paperwork, heavy permit issues, heavy utility issues, heavy material ordering issues. So it was a lot of paperwork in my business model. So for my first hire was a personal assistant just to help me with everything on the back end. And then as we continued to grow, my second hire was a project manager. My third hire was a salesperson because that was my business model. I was heavy on the flipping side. Now, for somebody that's in the game and maybe they run a wholesaling model, when there's not, heavy material ordering, heavy permit handling, and all these other things, usually the first person that gets hired, outside of cold callers for marketing internally, usually the first person that gets hired is like a junior acquisitions person. So they'll start taking calls and then laying them up to you to close, and then they'll learn the closing from you, and then inevitably they'll become a salesperson. So it just depends on like a person's business model. But mine personally was an assistant just for the way we operated at the time.
I love that you hired an assistant first. I think that's a great move. I'm curious, did this person come and just knock it out of the park? Did you have to train them specifically? Like, what was that like? Because we've tried to outsource, there's ways to do it in other countries. You kind of have to train. There's a language barrier. I'm not sure if that's going to work. It's virtual. Like, what was your experience like? It sounded like it worked for you.
Yeah, so I hired a couple, immediately fired them. So it didn't work out right away. Ended up getting somebody that was, I think, with me for a few years, 3 years maybe 4. And they did good. We got by and everything. But what I'm realizing now, and I'm definitely not the best person on hiring, just put that out there. But what I've really come to realization is that you don't want to hire for where you are today. You want to hire for where you're going in the next 6, 12, 24, 36 months. And that's hard for people to understand because if you're hiring for where you're going, you're hiring a better person, which requires more money to be paid.
Yep,
right.
Exactly.
And again, mental barrier. Like I can't afford it now, right? But I can afford it in 6 months. Like that's where I'm going, but I can't afford it today. So it's a hard mental barrier that you have to get through. My most recent hire, she starts next week. It's more money than I've ever paid to somebody. And, I'm nervous, but excited at the same time because it's for where I want to go, not where I am today.
I think that brings you back to a thought I had earlier on the episode. You mentioned, first of all, thanks for that. You mentioned that you spent about $50,000 a year on mentorship and coaching. And I think it's kind of one of the same conversation, right? You're paying for where you want to go, right? And I think a lot of us in the real estate game, at some point it hits us, we're like, damn, like I need someone to help me run the ship a little bit. Like we can only do so much, but also think about when you're, I don't know, back in the day having relationship issues and your buddy tells you 3 different things. It's so much easier to tell someone has no emotion in it. Like, dude, you're doing the wrong thing. She sucks. Here's what you got to do. But then when it's you're like, oh, maybe I should stay. Maybe I should do this, whatever. Just relating it to people in relationships, right? But for me, I'm thinking about Corey and I, and it's a selfish question. We're at the point where like, we're at a tipping point where like, dude, like we're about to take off. And we know we need to invest in someone else to take us to the level, or maybe that extra mastermind, we're already in one, maybe it's another one that's another $15,000. You need to do it. You're just like, damn, dude, like can I afford that right now? I'm not totally sure. So can you take me through the $50,000 a year, like how you, I guess, like a pie chart, how you divvy it up between your coaching, mentorship, maybe it's all in one place, and then how that actually helps you scale your business, and not only your business, but like your mental and your personal life.
100%. And you said something that reminded me of one of the most profound things I've ever heard. Now, this is a question I want to see answered, and then I'll tell you it. But one of my mentors was like, what is the difference between the team that wins the Super Bowl and every other team? There's only one difference. Well, what's the difference between the Super Bowl team and everybody else who didn't win the Super Bowl?
I think it's a layup. Is it coaching?
It's the players that are on the field. The best players on the field win. So when somebody said that, I was like, man, I'm trying to win the Super Bowl, and I got college players and high school players on my team. And you can't get to where you want to go without having the right people on your team. So that one more nugget back on the hiring side. But to your question, on the education, I spend $50,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on the year. But there's one mastermind is $35,000. I've been in for 5 years, I think, give or take a year. That's been amazing. And then, typically throughout the year, I might join another one for another 10 or 20. or I'm going to like a 2-day, mastermind event for, $2,000, $5,000, $7,000, where I'm buying, somebody's program for $1,000 or $2,000. Anytime I want to go into something new, I pay for it, right? I want to become a better speaker and I want to speak on stages. I just spent $2,500 to go to a 2-day to learn how to become a better speaker, right? So, there's big chunks, and then there's like small things for things that I just want to learn along the way. So I'm a big believer is like paying for the education. It's a shortcut to where you want to go. And for me, it's a lot of people come in, if you're going to like to specifically learn a how-to, that's like a course or a coaching program, right? It's like, hey, I want to learn how to market. Here's a step-by-step on marketing, right? You're going to learn a specific thing. When you're going into masterminds, usually the higher ticket type of things, I get questions on my mastermind. They're like, hey, Austin, like, what do I get? And it's not like, hey, you get this, right? It's more of like, hey, like you want to be around the right people. You want to grow your mindset. Like 1, 2, or 3 nuggets a year can drastically change your business, right? One of my mentors today, I learned one thing. I'll make multi-7 figures this year off of that one thing. And if I didn't learn that one thing, I wouldn't have made a whole bunch of money. So it's not like it's the people that you're around. I've done a lot of deals with a lot of different people in groups that I'm in. And it's just having that person to call. It's like, hey, I'm making this hire. Here's my struggle. What do you recommend? And they're like, they push you over the edge, right? You need someone that, I believe everyone's on a cliff in life, and they're like looking over and they're ready to go on that tipping point and they're ready to go, but they're hesitant. And you just need a little from somebody to get going in the right direction. So
yeah, totally, man. And the masterminds for us, it's more put us in rooms with people that are better than us, and which we want to consistently be in those rooms. And it's like, your $3,500 problem or your $15,000 problem, when they have $250,000 problems, they know how to solve those because they already did it. So that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the ability to solve the problem that these people have already went through. And I find that that's invaluable, right? I mean, I remember when I bought my first duplex and I got calls about a storm came and like blew out the windows, and I was like, this is the worst thing I've ever done. Why am I doing this? And I just stuck with it. And that problem now is like not a big problem like it used to be.
Then your house burned down.
Then our house burned down.
Bigger problems, buddy.
Well, yeah, but yeah, exactly. Then we elevated to a bigger problem. House burning down. We had insurance, so that was good. But like, it's just the rooms that you get in where people are like, oh, I have this dollar amount allocated to this. This is no problem, man. Wait till you're at my level. And I think that that builds the confidence to know that you can do it as well.
Yeah, and I think to that point too, it's like when you pay to go into these things, there's also like, are you just going to sit there, or are you going to be the first person that raises their hand? Are you going to share your story and just be vulnerable? Like for me, I noticed I was and I'm not, it's because I knew what we were putting into this, and I've been into other situations, and I've seen, like, for example, when you have to present a project, right? And if you're the first person that goes up and presents, you usually get a little bit of leniency. They're like, oh man, they were daring enough to go up. I'm not going to kill them, but like, here's what's improved, blah, blah, blah. And then you're done. Cool, move on. Then you get to watch everybody else kind of like shitting bricks and going up there and you're like, I'm done, man. That was great. So I'm bringing this up as like, for us, when we got into the mastermind, I'm like, dude, I'm raising my hand every time. I don't care if I'm the first person to speak. Maybe it's because we've done the podcast and we're always talking to people. We're like, I'm not really scared to say anything anymore, but it really went a long way. Then you have people hitting you up on the side. They're like, oh, dude, what are you doing? Like, let me ask you questions about that. And so when you give, I think it, comes back 10x, and you receive a lot down the line. But I think it's if you're going to spend the money, why not go all the way in? You might get a couple nuggets throughout the year, but I think it's taking the action, right? You can only get so much research and education from things. It's like, cool, I learned that. I'll go do it the next day, like immediately start. So yeah, just a little nugget there.
Totally. So as we wind down the show a little bit here, I want to know, you mentioned that you wanted to hire people for what's next. Like, you're not hiring for now, you're hiring for what's next. So the question would be, Austin, what is next for you? Like, what does the next 1 to 3 years look like? Maybe 5 years, and where do you want to go?
Yeah, so buying a ton of real estate. So hiring a team that understands the game of real estate, whether that's transaction coordination, project management, and or property management. That might be the next big thing, is bringing that in the house, which I'm not looking forward to. But massively growing the real estate portfolio. I just think there's so many benefits to it long term. And I'm buying very, very heavy right now for tax purposes too. So like, if you have other businesses that are generating real income, you have a crazy tax liability. And the beautiful thing about real estate is you can offset most of that tax liability by buying more real estate. So you have a choice to either write a check to the government or write a check to a house. I want to write a check to a house. The money's going either way. I want to own the asset, right? So when that light bulb finally went off, it's like, all right, I need to buy X houses by the end of this year to not pay taxes, right? I'm going to have the same amount of money put into it, but I didn't want to put the money in years ago. I'm willing to put the money in because I realize that the money's going either way. So buying a ton of real estate, just bought a 16,000 square foot warehouse a couple months ago, first big commercial deal. Super excited about it. It's listed. I think we just got an offer at the number that we thought we were going to get an offer at. We bought it for 6. That means it'll be worth like 1.4. And I'm like, holy crap, this is beautiful. It's a triple net lease. It's one tenant. I'm like, this 5-year lease. I'm like, this is great. So I'm going to go and try buy more commercial warehouse buildings and or build industrial. So that's all on the real estate side, the portfolio side. Past that, building the brand, I say eyeballs is currency. So the more eyeballs you have, the more opportunities you're going to have. So we have, coaching programs, masterminds, mentorships, and a lot of the deal flow that we get comes from, either people in our coaching programs or people that just know me from social media. 2 of my biggest deals, both 7-figure deals, came from social media essentially. I didn't find those deals. They weren't my deals. They were somebody that found me because I was the guy that was omnipresent, and they picked up the phone and gave me a call. So building the brand massively, and then starting some other businesses. We have a couple that are operating, doing 7 figures, and just try to continue to grow those.
So talk about your mastermind, your community, like talk about the value that you feel like you bring to somebody who wants to jump in with you.
Yeah, so it's elevate life. It kind of came down from, I see a lot of people are great in different aspects of their life, but very few, it's faith, family, finances, and fitness, right? They may be a great father or mother, or they may be a great businessman, or maybe very healthy, but they are terrible in other aspects of their life, right? So it's like, how do you elevate all those things at the same time between your faith, family, finances, and fitness? So that's kind of where it came from. It's obviously real estate centered because that's what I've been doing. It's what I've done for a very long time. So helping find deals, raising money, building a rental portfolio. Wealth is through ownership. So that's heavy on that, is actually owning properties long term. And we have masterminds, we have mentorships, we got a 2-day mastermind. So, trying to help people continue to get more wealthy, every day.
Oh man, I mean, it's pretty evident that just the way you articulate yourself, what you've been through, what you talk about, like you really know what you're doing. I hope people that are listening take a look into this. There's a ton of masterminds, there's a ton of groups out there. There's very few of them that, give away, or not give away, but provide the value. So I want people to check that out. That's great. I asked you this question earlier and you answered by saying that you would go door knocking, but I'm curious. Let's say you were starting over today or not starting over, but like if you were giving somebody advice to get to the point where you were, maybe a little bit deeper dive. Is there something specific? Is there a market that you would go into? Is there an added strategy that you would tell people, hey, I want to be Austin in 6 years. What can I do to get there?
Yeah, so I say that people come into this business in 2 different ways. One is that they already have money or a high-paying W-2 or another business, and they just want to build wealth through rental properties, right? So they're coming in with money. So somebody like that can just go out and buy rental properties and place money and do the Burr method and raise money to place the money. Like there's a lot of ways, but it's on the wealth side. So if people are coming in with money, they can just go out and start buying rental properties from wholesalers and or off the MLS, right? We do a lot of that. We pay hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars every single month in assignment fees from wholesalers for good deals. So if you have money, do that. That's a very quick, easy way to do it. If you're coming from the other side where you're trying to build something, you're not established, you don't have a lot of money, it's a slower process, right? It's a little bit more of a grind. You got to put a little bit more time, energy, and effort in. So somebody that's coming down from that path, if they want to be me in 6 years, just condense my timeline in less than 6 years, right? It's 9 years, do it in 6, which to me would be things like understanding the whole game. Like it took me 16 months to do my first deal because I didn't know what wholesaling was. I could only imagine how many great rental properties I passed on at the time that I could have wholesaled to a hedge fund or somebody like me today back then, right? I just didn't know it. So understanding the wholesaling, the flipping, the private money, those are kind of the aspects of real estate. Understanding that early on, and then growing that, and doing the thing that we talked about earlier is like figuring out your monthly, expenses, not 5 years into the game, maybe like 3 years into the game. And I'd own, a 40, 50, $60 million portfolio today instead of a $20 million portfolio. So, that's kind of how you can condense that timeline. But at the end of the day, there's 2 amazing things in real estate. If you have deal flow or if you have access to money, you can get involved in a lot of different deals. So if you're great at marketing and sales, go get more deals. If you're great at raising private money, go raise more money, because one of those ways, opportunities are going to flow to you.
I love that you said that at the end, because I feel like like we mentioned pre-recording that we're a few steps behind you, but we have access to deal flow through people that are not us, that are great operators, that are doing it every day, that are full-time real estate investors. We're not. We still have our W-2 jobs and running the podcast. But we also have access to capital because we've built a brand and a relationship with people that know, like, and trust us. So we inadvertently have both. And it validated it for me that we're on the right path. So it's awesome.
Yeah. I got one more.
Yeah. Do it.
Yeah. So this is a fun one. Personal question for you. You know, I think back to, I know you're a young dude, you're only 30, but thinking back to your young days of hooping, you're valeting, you're still in class, and you're like, you have big wide eyes. You're thinking about like, dude, I'm going to make it one day. I know where you're at now, dude. You're friggin' killing it across the board, and in all your pillars, I would imagine. But at least, you know, what we see on social, I know not everybody's like that, but based on our conversation, like, dude, you're well-rounded, holistic. I love chatting with you. So roundabout what made me ask is like, is there a moment, or has there been a moment where you've been able to take a step back and just look around and say, like, damn, I made it. Like I made it through, and like, for me, like, you feel fulfilled because you never know when your next day is your last. And I just want to, I'm so curious. I love learning about everybody, and your story's unique, right? So curious if you had one of those moments where you're just able to sit back and be like, damn, I did it.
You know, that's a good question. I think I need to do it more often. You know, like one of the big things is like when I, you know, bought my Rolls Royce Wraith, right? I had a Chrysler 300 in high school because this closest thing kind of looks like a Wraith.
Yeah.
So I ended up buying the Wraith like 3 years ago, and it hit me for maybe half a day, maybe. And I was right back to it right after that. Or, you know, when I bought, you know, multi-million-dollar dream house down in Florida, the thing that I always envisioned growing up, a year ago, you know, it hit me for maybe a day, maybe. I'm already ready to move now. I mean, we literally just been here for a year, and I'm already sending my wife other houses. I'm like, yo, it's time to level up, time to go bigger. And you know, when I got 100 rental properties, like my congratulations was like a social media post, like, hey, I did 100 houses. So I think I can definitely do better at it, but it might sound crazy, but I genuinely feel like I'm broke, like every day. Like every day I'm like, oh, I'm about to lose it all. And it just keeps me hungry to keep going. You know, we have a lot of money in the pipeline, and I mean, just the rental portfolio alone can pay for itself and, you know, take care of everything going forward. And I don't even think about the rental portfolio, and I feel like I need to go make it every single day. So I think there's times and moments where like I'm like, all right, like we're doing all right. But then literally like the next second I'm like, I'm gonna lose it all and I gotta go make it back.
Dude, that's the real answer. That's what I was looking for. It's cool because, dude, I don't know what it is, and it's hard for entrepreneurs to explain this, but we feel the same thing. It's like you just have this innate desire to level up, or it's the competitor in you. I don't know if I related it back to basketball, human, like the fire in you.
It's like being a human too, like progress. Like, just, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's, I think, what it comes down to. You wouldn't do what you do, Austin, if you didn't love it. Like, you wouldn't continue to level up, and you wouldn't continue to try to strive for the next best thing if you didn't actually buy into and fall in love with that process. You mentioned fall in love with basketball and then fall in love with real estate. If you didn't love it, then all the money and the roles and the like, it wouldn't matter that much to you. You would just, I feel like diving back in is almost a sentiment for you that you love what you're doing every day. You can wake up and enjoy that process, even if there are challenges that come along with it. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely challenges. I think there's one thing. So I got asked this years ago, and and the answer's always been like, hey, when there's a time where I wake up and I regret not spending the time with the people that I wanted to spend time with, then I'm like, all right, like, you know, let's take it back a second, right? And you know, I just got married almost 3-4 months ago, and we're talking about having children now. And ever since that kind of conversation started, it's been something that's weighing heavily on me. It's like, how do I build a business even better where it removes myself, right? Where I can actually have, because right, like I'll outwork anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere. I'll put in 24-hour days for as long as I know that's me, right? But it's like when I have a kid, I want to be present, right? When my wife, I want to be present. We were driving in the car the other day, and she's like, do you want to do date night on Saturday? And I got an ungodly amount of things going on and moving, transition, like it's crazy. And she said that, and I was driving. I was like, hey, but I got to do this. And like, I was like, fuck that. Like, yes, we're doing date night on Saturday, right? So I think as you come into yourself, and for me, it's the faith, family, finances, and fitness, it sets in a little bit differently to force, and I take it as a challenge to force me to build a business differently where I can have the complete absolute time freedom that I want to have. So it's kind of, I don't know if that answers, but last month, it's really been hitting home for me.
It does, man. Dude, you're a competitor too. I think there's something about being able to wake up every day and like doing your thing. And truly, and you also mentioned about like spending time with people, you're also spending a lot of time with people that look up to you and that you're teaching and you're bettering their lives. So there's something to that, like that's fulfilling, right? And dude, I mean, seeing how you light up talking about other people and your program and all that, like just wait till you officially have the kid. Like I just had one. I didn't have one, my wife had one. But dude, it's unbelievable. It's the coolest thing in the friggin' world, and it's very hard. But I see how hard you go on your day-to-day job. Like, you're just going to go, it'll be hilarious if you had a little girl, dude. You're just going to go so friggin' hard at being a dad. And it's the coolest shit ever. And then you know you're good, though. Like, all your other stuff, you already grinded the last 8 years or whatever it is. You're set up. Like, you'll find a way. Believe it or not, you'll go harder than you are now, which is almost probably seems impossible. Whatever it is, like, I thought I'd be like, oh, yeah, like, I'm just, I'm always competitive. I always get up and do it. I do shit that I couldn't even think about then a day. And I'm like, well, just doing it. So it tests you a little bit more. And I don't know, it's more of just a fun topic of conversation for me because I'm living it right now. And I just see how you are. I've only known you for an hour, but I just have a funny feeling you're going to go beast mode on it, man. It's awesome. So congratulations on getting married, by the way.
Likewise. Congrats on the kid, man. It's fun. Everybody says that. They're like, it's like when they're there, it's like an even bigger motivation and a bigger driver. So I'm looking to it.
Cool. So last question of the show. Let's say you could go back to we kind of ask it similarly, but like think about when you felt like your basketball dreams were crushed, right? Knowing what you know now, what advice would you tell that 17, 18-year-old Austin about, I always say this, like, I'm not sure he would listen, maybe he would, but what advice would you give him?
Yeah. So at the moment when basketball started to not, I started to fall out of love with the game of basketball. I've never been asked this question. I always get asked what I would tell myself 10 years ago, but in that moment specifically,
it can be 10 years ago too. I just kind of wanted to frame it like,
no, we need the hard one, dude.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah.
I like this one because it's like, this is like, maybe you just went through a breakup or you got laid off from your job or you got fired or something. Like this is that moment for people. I think, there's always like this little doubt that was a doubt in my head. It's like, what if this doesn't work? What if I don't get it? And it was really small, but it was there, right? I had confidence. I did it for 16 months. Like I knew something was going to happen, but it was still this little piece in the back of my head. And what I say specifically about real estate is not an if game. Real estate, you guys have done deals. I've done deals. There's a lot of people that have done deals and make a lot of money in real estate. If is out of the question. The only question that exists still is when real estate's going to work, not if real estate's going to work. So if somebody's thinking about doing the real estate thing is to completely 1000% remove the if from their head. And I think they'll get to that 9 years and 6 years things that we talked about earlier. They might be able to do it in 2 or 3 or 4 years. So I think that's one thing, completely remove the what if question from the head entirely because it does work. And I think that's the biggest one.
Cool. Awesome. It's been a pleasure, man. It's just cool to get to know you. I love the real estate. I love the business. I love the strategy, all that. But just getting to know you as a person is like really what we do this podcast for, because it just goes to show that there's a lot of good people out there that are providing value to others. I'm not a member of your mastermind or your community, but I can just tell that it works. So hopefully people take a listen to that. But I just want to thank you for coming on and spending an hour with us. We really appreciate it.
100%. I appreciate the opportunity. It was great connecting with both of you guys.
Thanks, man. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in this week to the Weekly Juice Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, subscribe, and share with friends. The more ratings we get, the more ears we'll get on our show, and in turn, we'll be able to provide you with more high-quality guests. You can also find us on Instagram at Weekly Juice Pod, where we post daily tips and tricks and document our own journey towards financial freedom. Make sure to tune in every Wednesday to get your weekly juice.